At some point during the third night, people stop being scared of not sleeping. They stop being scared of anything. That's the part nobody tells you. You'd expect someone who hasn't slept in 3 days to be a mess, anxious, desperate, begging for rest. And they are for a while. But somewhere past the 60-hour mark, something shifts. The desperation fades. A strange, quiet calm sets in. And the person looking back at you from the mirror feels, and this is the word most people use when they describe it, distant. Like someone who resembles you but isn't quite running the same software anymore. Scientists have a clinical explanation for this, we'll get to it. But what I want you to sit with right now, before we go any further, is this. Every single thing you think of as you, your judgment, your personality, your ability to tell what's real, all of it runs on sleep. And it doesn't go quietly when the sleep stops. It goes in stages. Predictable, documented, deeply unsettling stages. And by the time you reach stage 3, most people can no longer tell that anything is wrong. That last part is the part that should concern you. The moment you decide to stay awake, or the moment life forces you to, a clock starts ticking inside your brain. It's a biological countdown that has been running in every human being who has ever lived. It's called the circadian rhythm, and it doesn't care about your deadlines, your anxiety, or your reasons. It has one job, to bring you down. In the first few hours, you don't notice it much. You're alert, you're functioning. Maybe you're even a little proud of yourself, but quietly, invisibly, your brain has already started preparing for sleep. A chemical called adenosine is building up in your synapses. It's a byproduct of the brain burning energy, and it accumulates with every hour you're awake. Think of it like exhaust fumes. The longer the engine runs without a flush, the thicker the air gets. Caffeine, by the way, doesn't actually give you energy. It works by blocking the adenosine receptors, essentially putting a piece of tape over the low fuel light on your dashboard. The fumes are still there, the car is still running on empty, you just can't see the warning anymore. By hour 16, most people are already mildly impaired. Your reaction time has slowed, your emotional regulation is starting to loosen. Small things irritate you more than they should. And if someone put you in a simulator right now, your performance behind the wheel would be legally comparable to someone with alcohol in their system, but you probably feel fine. That's the first trick exhaustion plays on you. It convinces you that you're okay. Hour 24 is where things start to get genuinely interesting. One full day without sleep. At this point, something remarkable is happening in your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thinking, impulse control, planning, and judgment. It's going dim, not shutting off entirely, but starting to lose its grip. And as the prefrontal cortex weakens, the emotional centers of the brain, the amygdala especially, begin to take over. The amygdala is ancient. It doesn't reason. It reacts. It's the part of your brain that makes you flinch before you've registered the spider, that floods your chest with dread before you've consciously understood what you're afraid of. Under normal circumstances, the prefrontal cortex acts as a filter, a translator between raw emotion and considered response. After 24 hours without sleep, that filter starts to fail. Studies have shown that at this stage, the emotional reaction to negative images, disturbing photos, threatening faces, upsetting scenario becomes roughly 60% more intense than in a rested person. 60%. Your internal world is turning up the volume on everything dark, everything threatening, everything that feels wrong. And at the same time, your ability to contextualize those feelings, to step back and say, this is not as bad as it seems, that ability is fading. You become, in a very real neurological sense, a more emotional, less rational version of yourself. And you still don't feel that tired. Somewhere around the 36-hour mark, the body starts sending in reinforcement it was never supposed to deploy this early. Stress hormones, primarily cortisol, begin flooding your system. In normal circumstances, cortisol is your morning alarm. It rises naturally before you wake up, giving you a jolt of alertness to start the day, then fades as evening approaches. But after 36 hours without sleep, your body is desperate. It starts treating wakefulness like an emergency, like a threat it has to compensate for. So it dumps cortisol into your bloodstream, out of sequence, at wrong times, in wrong amounts. The result is a strange, paradoxical state. You feel a kind of wired, humming, jittery alertness, but underneath it, your cognition is deteriorating rapidly. Your memory is fracturing. You're having genuine difficulty forming new memories at this point because the hippocampus, the structure that consolidates short-term experience into long-term storage, requires sleep to do that work. Information that enters your brain is going nowhere. It's like riding on water. And then there's the microsleeps. This is where things become alarming. Microsleeps are involuntary episodes where your brain simply switches off for anywhere between 1 and 30 seconds without your awareness or consent. You don't feel it happen. You don't know it's happening. One moment you're looking at something, and the next moment a sliver of time has simply vanished, and the world has moved forward without you. People experience microsleeps while driving, while operating machinery, while having conversations. They are, in the most literal sense, brief moments where you are unconscious and unaware that you are unconscious. After 36 hours, they're becoming frequent. Your brain is stealing sleep wherever it can, in whatever fragments it's allowed to take. Now, we arrive at 72 hours, 3 days. If you have never been here, and most people haven't, what you are about to hear may be difficult to fully absorb, because at 3 days without sleep, the human mind does not merely struggle, it begins to dissolve. The first sign, in most documented cases, is a change in perception. The world starts to look slightly wrong. Shadows seem to move in peripheral vision. Patterns on walls or floors seem to shift. To breathe, to reconfigure, faces can begin to look subtly different. Expressions misread, features distorted. These are not metaphors. They are genuine perceptual events, the result of a visual processing system that is misfiring, generating signals that have no basis in external reality. Then come the hallucinations. In the most well-documented cases, including the famous experiments of the sleep deprivation era and individual cases like Randy Gardner, who famously stayed awake for 11 days under scientific observation in 1964, full hallucinations typically begin appearing around the 72-hour mark. Visual hallucinations, auditory ones, complete convincing experiences of things that are not there. Randy Gardner, as a 17-year-old boy, hallucinated that a street sign was a person. He hallucinated that he was a famous football player. He experienced moments where he could not distinguish what was real from what his mind was generating. Think about what that means. Without any substance, without any external cause, 3 days of no sleep was enough to produce the symptoms of acute psychosis in a healthy teenager. The brain, deprived of sleep long enough, begins to dream while awake, because dreaming, it turns out, is not optional. REM sleep, the stage where most dreaming occurs, is the stage where the brain processes emotion, consolidates identity, repairs the circuits damaged by waking life. When you go long enough without it, the brain does not quietly accept the deprivation. It forces its way in. Dream imagery begins bleeding into waking consciousness. The border between inside and outside breaks down. But here is what I find most unsettling about all of this. It's not the hallucinations. It's not the emotional volatility or the fractured memory. It's something subtler and in some ways more profound. Somewhere around the second day without sleep, many people report a strange experience, a sense of detachment, of watching themselves from a slight distance, of feeling like the person making decisions, speaking words, moving through space is not quite them. Psychologists call it depersonalization, a dissociation between the self and one's experience of the self. And what's striking is that this experience, this sense of I'm no longer fully me, may not be entirely wrong, because the person operating at 72 hours without sleep has genuinely different cognitive processing, genuinely different emotional responses, genuinely different perception than the person who went to sleep 3 days ago. The architecture of their experience has changed. Who are you when your prefrontal cortex is offline? When your emotions are 60% louder and your reason is barely a whisper? When your brain is generating experiences that don't exist and forgetting the ones that do? When you can't trust your eyes or your memory or your instincts? Sleep deprivation doesn't just make you tired. At its extreme, it raises a genuinely destabilizing question about the nature of the self. Because if you are, in large part, the product of the state of your brain, and the state of your brain can be so radically altered by something as simple as the absence of sleep, then how stable is you, really? There is a disease, rare and always fatal, that takes this question to its most horrifying conclusion. It's called fatal familial insomnia. It is caused by a prion, a misfolded protein that spreads through brain tissue, destroying it from within. It is hereditary, passed down through families like a dark inheritance, and it begins, usually in middle age, with a simple, terrifying symptom: the inability to sleep. Not difficulty sleeping, not insomnia in the ordinary sense. A complete, total biological inability to sleep. The neural circuits that allow the brain to transition into sleep have been destroyed. And what follows is a structured, predictable unraveling. The first stage, insomnia, begins, accompanied by panic attacks and strange phobias. The second stage, hallucinations, intensify. The third stage, complete inability to sleep, rapid weight loss, and severe dementia. The fourth stage, the person becomes unresponsive. And then they die. The entire process takes, on average, about 12 months. There is no cure. There is no treatment that meaningfully slows it. And the most chilling part, reported by physicians and family members who have watched it progress, is that the patient, even in the later stages, is often aware, trapped behind the hallucinations, behind the dementia, aware that something has gone terribly wrong, but unable to reach the surface of their own consciousness. Fatal familial insomnia has affected fewer than 100 families worldwide, but its existence tells us something essential. Sleep is not a luxury. It is not a biological afterthought. It is a mechanism by which the brain maintains itself, repairs itself, remains itself. Without it, the mind doesn't just slow down, it comes apart. The person who has gone 3 days without sleep, if they finally lie down, will recover. That's the remarkable thing. The brain has a stunning capacity for restoration. The first night of recovery sleep will be dominated by deep, slow wave sleep, the body's priority, its first order of business, the most physically restorative stage. The second night will prioritize REM, the emotional and identity repair stage. Within 2 or 3 nights of full sleep, most cognitive functions return to near baseline levels. The brain remembers how to be itself. Sleep is how it does the remembering. Tonight, when you lie down, if you're someone who sometimes resists sleep, who scrolls for another hour, who treats rest as something to be earned rather than maintained, maybe think about what's actually happening on the other side of that resistance. Think about the adenosine clearing from your synapses, the memories of the day being filed and organized, the emotional processing happening in the dark behind your eyes, the quiet, essential maintenance of everything that makes you, you. Sleep isn't where life stops. It might be where you are most fundamentally constructed. And the version of you that exists on the other side of 3 sleepless days, erratic, haunted, hallucinating, barely tethered to reality. That version is not some dramatic worst case scenario. It's just you, without the thing that holds you together. Which means the question isn't really what happens to your mind after 3 days of no sleep. The question is, what is your mind when sleep is the thing that builds it?